and I took Lake City by quote-unquote $1 billion in the play-in game.
On the North Idaho Prepcast, we're all about that North Idaho life.
Man, you talk about Wallace and what they've been able to do this year. Quietly just being, the steady stalwart up north in District 1. They've been dominant.
From Bonners Ferry all the way down to Grangeville, we tackle the biggest stories in North Idaho sports.
This Genesee team is for real. We know we saw it last year. They're I think in the driver's seat to repeat.
It's the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs. It is the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down District 1 and 2 activities week in, week out in the great state of Idaho. Brandon Baney coming to you live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. You can watch this show on replay anytime at those three destinations. You can also listen to this Prepcast at IdahoSports.com. All of our Prepcasts are directly to the left on the home screen, and you can also download this podcast wherever you download and subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. My name is Brandon Baney, but really the guy you came to see is Ryan Scaggs, our North Idaho expert. What's up, Scaggs?
Not much, just drinking my industrial-sized cup of coffee today.
Yeah, boy. I need one of those. I've been up since 4 a.m. So yes, it's been a long day already. I'm having some internet problems, so I'm just going to apologize in advance if I go offline or something in the middle of the show. I keep getting bumped off my internet, and so we will try to get through this as best as we can, Scaggs.
Yeah, we'll give her our best try.
Well, all of our North Idaho athletes gave it their best try this past week as well. Let's start with golf. You're really plugged into what's going on in the high school golf scene up north here. And spoiler alert, more impressive performances from Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint.
Yeah, well, and in the last tournament that was this week at the Idaho Club, Post Falls actually had the medalist, which was cool to see. But then you go into the golf ranks as far as what happened with the results there. Coeur d'Alene won on the boys' side. I think it was like a 23-stroke lead that they won by, and then Sandpoint won on the girls' side in the Bulldog Invitational by 11 strokes. So both a great showing by both teams that we knew was going to be great going into the season, and they've been dominant as of late. But Post Falls getting the medalist, I mean that's a pretty cool deal for that program, a shot in the arm for them. And then like we've seen like scores of how lucky are these kids like in high school to go play at a Jack Nicklaus course in the middle of their high school golf season.
It's pretty awesome. That's pretty epic for sure. The state golf tournaments this year, last year we got to host them up here in North Idaho. This year, you got to head south. The 6A state tournament is going to be held at the Highland Golf Club in Pocatello. That is a stone's throw from Iron Horse Stadium, where Highland High School plays their football games. You can actually see people sometimes driving by on the golf carts from Iron Horse Stadium. So that'll be cool. And then
Carl Barron was the medalist, by the way. I forgot to mention his name, so I don't want to slight anybody. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. Shout out to Carl. The 5A state golf tournament is going to be held in Burley at the River's Edge Golf Club. I'll admit, I don't know anything about that one, but if you're hosting state, it's got to be pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that Idaho's getting more and more of is some high quality golf courses. I mean, I'm not as much of a golf snob as I used to be, but in their own right, I mean, up here in North Idaho, we're spoiled rotten with some amazing courses. Obviously, everybody knows about the resort course, but the high school kids don't play any events there. But even the public courses are great. And then you have courses like Avondale and Hayden Country Club, and you can go all the way up to Stone Ridge too. There's some phenomenal places to play. Galena Ridge in Kellogg is one of the unsung, like, amazing courses that doesn't get a lot of notoriety that it deserves, and Kellogg gets to host some events there. So, I mean, we're really lucky to have some amazing places to play around here.
It is on my bucket list, Galena Ridge. I was, as a kid, I golfed the Stone Ridge course. My best friend, his family, because up at Stone Ridge, it's kind of like a timeshare deal, right? And they got the place like for 2 weeks in the summer or whatever. So we'd go up there and hang out. And so anyways, a lot of good golfing up here in North Idaho. That is for sure. Hey, some good soccer action as well. nothing really has changed. Last week we looked at the standings in soccer and said, here's who's doing well. Here's how we anticipate it could go. I mean, spoiler alert, in boys soccer, especially, still Coeur d'Alene Charter and Bonners Ferry from the 4A ranks, and Lake City and Coeur d'Alene finally played in the crosstown matchup in that lonely two-team district up there at the 6A level.
Yeah, and Lake City getting the win over Coeur d'Alene in that one. We saw Coeur d'Alene Charter played a crossover match the other day in boys and girls with Post Falls. The Post Falls girls got off the schneid and got their win on the season over Coeur d'Alene Charter, and then the Coeur d'Alene Charter boys defeated Post Falls. So, I mean, that's a 4A, quote unquote. I mean, Coeur d'Alene Charter is technically a 3A school, but or are they 4A now? They're 4A now. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. For a second with the classification change. But yeah, playing up, a class to play that game and getting a win. I mean, that's a big deal for that boys team over Post Falls School with, nearly 2,000 kids in the high school. So, yeah, I mean, there's some great matches. Moscow got on the girls' side, got a huge win over Lewiston, snapping Lewiston's win streak. So that was a big deal for the Bears. I mean, you talk about a big year in sports for Moscow athletics. That soccer team, looks to be turning the corner, and they could push Sandpoint a little bit on the girls' side in IEL play. There's, Lewiston's got a lot to say about that too, but there's just, some high quality soccer and other sports that are, going on at the same time. Well, I don't know, football gets a ton of focus, but we've got a lot of stuff going on up here with a lot of great programs up north.
Yes. And so we kind of went through soccer last week. This week, I really wanted to dive into volleyball a little bit because we had some really impressive volleyball performances. Really, since the start of the season, we kind of missed a couple of big exits where the Judy Fong Memorial Tournament was held earlier this month at Lewiston. Like always, Troy, one of the smallest schools there, ended up winning the whole enchilada. They beat Lewiston in the finals. So Troy, hey, they're undefeated. They're still rocking and rolling. Last weekend we had, or this would have been 2 weekends ago now, we had the Rip-A-Shot tournament hosted over in Rockford, Washington by Freeman High School. Lakeland performed very well there. Lake City went over and performed very well. St. Mary's was over there playing. They did pretty good. Lewiston was there playing. They did pretty well. Post Falls went to a tournament in Richland and competed very well. A lot of strong North Idaho volleyball programs. But I wanted to start with, at the other end, we talked about all the big schools, Genesis Prep.
Yeah.
G Prep is very quietly going about business, and they look like not the prohibitive, but the definite favorite in the District 1 North Star, or not the North Star League, the Scenic Idaho Conference up there in the Class 2A ranks.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were trying to go back through the records. We couldn't find anything about them making it to state in volleyball. So if they're able to complete the resume in front of them and get that district championship win, that would be a huge deal for that program, especially in what's been a fairly competitive conference. I mean, they've, got a win over Lakeside, whose only loss on the season is to Genesis Prep in that match. And they beat Wallace last night. So this Genesis Prep team, I mean, they're on a tear right now. They're like 5-3 overall so far in the season, but they've won all their league contests. They're 4-0 in conference play right now. Yeah,
the 3 losses have come to Timberlake twice and Bonners Ferry in a 5-set thriller, 3-2. And those are 2 levels above, right? If G Prep is a 2A, Timberlake and Bonners Ferry are 4A programs. And so I've been very impressed. They have gone one turn through the league. They've beaten now Wallace twice on the season, so they swept the season series with the Miners. They've beaten Lakeside. They've beaten Clark Fork. I was looking back at the archives to see, when the last time Genesis Prep made it to state in volleyball. I went back as far as 2010. I didn't see them, and it kind of makes sense. I think they ping-ponged a little bit between what used to be 1A D2 and 1A D1, but the preeminent programs from North Idaho in terms of the 1As have been Clark Fork and Wallace. I mean, over the past 15, 20 years, they have been the dominant powers. We're seeing a changing of the guard this year before our very eyes. I wanted to give G Prep a shout out because they're playing very well.
Yeah, especially District 1, for the longest time was caught in that, having to get that play-in game for so long with the number 3 team out of District 2 or playing a crossover with somebody from down south. So, to see the conference get an actual legit bid to state, and if they're able to run the table in conference play and be the team to make it, I mean, that's an awesome story for, this early fall season.
Yep, for sure. And this year, District 1 does get a full bid to the 2A state tournament. So whoever wins that district title, they're in. That comes at the expense of District 5 and 6, which is Butte County and Grace. Now, both of those teams are certainly worthy of going to state as well. Really, the big culprit is District 3. They have so many teams, but in terms of how do they stack up against the other teams around the state, they're not there. But they continue to get more bids because they're a larger conference. Yeah. It's an imperfect system, but what are you going to do, right?
Exactly, yeah. And another team in the area, too, that at the small school level that's kind of sneaking under the radar right now is Potlatch in volleyball. They're very quietly. They're 9-2 overall. They swept last night. They beat Kamei and they beat Clearwater Valley. They're right at the top echelon of that group of teams in the White Pine League, along with, we obviously talk about Troy a ton on this program, but Potlatch is having a phenomenal season in their own right, and that Loggers team looks like they're loaded to make a run as well. So there's a lot of good play going on in the area, and I know that you get those nice write-ups from our writer that we have that does that weekly, the Kill, Keeping Up with the Kill, here on IdahoSports.com. Like, that article is great as well. It kind of fills you in, but there's still, you can't write about everybody, and there's some great stories around the area and some teams that are having great years that need some notoriety as well. Yeah,
Potlatch had that tight 3-2 win over Kamei last Saturday. 9-2 on the season. Their only two losses came at the Judy Fong tournament to Troy and then to Lewiston. I think they were in the same pool as Troy and like, gee, thanks. Thanks for lumping us in with these guys. But then they didn't lose again. So it was pretty impressive to see that.
Yeah, Potlatch won last night in 5 sets. So, I mean, they got pushed by Kamei in that match, and then they went on to win 3-0 against Clearwater Valley. But a huge night. I mean, they're 7-0 in league right now, is Potlatch. So they're kind of sitting there at the top, looking at the driver's seat possibly if they can win, them and Troy. You talk about a nice rivalry brewing in high school volleyball in the area. That's something to keep your eye on with, we've always talked about the Trojans, how strong they are. This Logger team is equally good in their own right.
Yeah. And they did get to play Troy for the first time last night. I'm trying to, yes.
Okay. Oh, this was, sorry. I'm reading results from, Friday. So this match from last week. I apologize. That's my bad.
No, you're good. I haven't had a chance to put that score in yet. It's on my list of things to do today. Troy did sweep Potlatch 3-0 last night for the first league loss of the season, but Potlatch certainly does look like, they're going to be right there.
Yeah, they're going to be right there. I mean, the possible podium finish. I mean, if you really look at state volleyball this year, the North looks extremely strong.
Yep. Okay. Because we're going to talk about two teams that look really strong and battled to a 5-set, exhilarating match last night. But first, our good friend Max Oswald from the Bonner County Daily Beat. Pivoting back to your soccer point earlier, the Sandpoint Coeur d'Alene boys game was a shocker. I did not expect the Bulldogs to win, let alone by that much. Have to shout out Sandpoint goalkeeper Gavin Miles, who had 10 saves. He came back out for the team this year after a couple years off. Hey, I love seeing that because participation is dwindling no matter what the sport is across the board. And so to see a kid leave and then decide to come back, I love it.
Yeah. And that, that match, we didn't really mention the result from that one, but, the things that we see, day to day here in conference, there's a lot of stuff that slides under the radar with football, but Sandpoint getting that huge win over Coeur d'Alene, they dominated in that match. We kind of skipped right over that one, but it just talks about the combined 6A, 5A IEL. We it's like beating the same drum over and over again, but like that conference is just so top heavy with heavy hitters that, each night it doesn't shock me because Sandpoint's a good program too. But we talked a lot about Coeur d'Alene being favored, to win the conference, run the table, looking into that stuff. But we just talk about, I guess, kind of get tripping up on the words, but there's just a lot there to look at, especially with a few weeks here left in the season before we open district play. And, you could say that the match doesn't really mean a ton because they're both in different classifications, but you couldn't tell when you look at the kids playing out there on the field.
Yeah, and in the world of max preps, every match counts, even if it's not a conference one. Just the improvement, because Sandpoint played Coeur d'Alene earlier this year and lost 4-1, and then they turn around and beat Coeur d'Alene 4-1. So that's that's an improvement of 6 goals right there, from -3 to +3. Big stretch coming up here for Sandpoint. They are at Moscow tomorrow, Thursday, September 26th. And then they are at Lewiston Saturday, September 28th. 2 road games over to District 2. That is probably going to be a season-defining stretch for the Sandpoint boys, who do remain in first place in the 5A IEL at 4-2-1. So that's a big stretch. Couple of tough roadies coming up here for the Sandpoint boys. Okay, let's get back to volleyball. We're going to stay in that Inland Empire League, though. Let's talk about Lakeland and Post Falls. They battled to a 5-set marathon last night. Post Falls pulls it out 3-2. Big win for Post Falls. I think Lakeland is still going to walk away going, hey, we were right there, and we still feel pretty good about where we are this year.
Yeah, and it's you look at the programs. Lakeland's been down, one of their better players, and not at full strength, and you still are able to step toe to toe with a really good team in 6A. But there's nothing to hang your head about. And I know that coach is still really high on their group, and the article was great in the Coeur d'Alene press about that match. But I think both these teams are going to go separate ways from this match and improve. I think Post Falls is going to be a team you don't want to play at district tournament time. Like that's a team that you necessarily, it's not going to be an easy out. We look at Lake City, we look at Coeur d'Alene and how good this league is as well. And Post Falls is Lakeland, in my opinion, was the dark horse for me as a favorite to win the state championship in 5A. Like they're that good of a program. So, I mean, you can say what you want with things and how they've changed in the landscape, but to get a big win last night over Lakeland, a really good club, and they're going to move on from this game and probably still have their shots and their chance to have great success. It's you want to be tested at this time of the season, and that's a great opportunity last night in that match.
Yep. Somebody really wise said all the way back in August, Lakeland was going to win the 5A volleyball championship this year. We will see. We'll see if my prediction holds true. I do. I really like this Lakeland team.
You look at the height, the athleticism on the floor. That group is so good. They're so good. And they're well coached too.
Yes. Both teams will be competing in the Sheridan Welch Crossover Classic over in Spokane this weekend. They're going to see really good competition over there for sure. Okay, so that's the Battle of the Prairie volleyball edition between Post Falls and Lakeland. How about the Battle of the Prairie football edition last Friday night? This was a game you and I were at, Ryan, on IdahoSports.com. Lakeland jumps out to a 7-0 lead. It was scoreless after a quarter. Then second quarter, Lovey Weil scores on a 2-yard touchdown run. Post Falls answers with a 2-yard run of their own from Devin Burton. And then Cash Lund, this was on a 4th down play, ends up taking it on a double reverse for a 16-yard touchdown run. And that was with 44 seconds to go before halftime. Lakeland led 14-7 at the half. Post Falls dominated most of that second half. They come out and tie the game in the third quarter. Isaac McEwen finds Chase Oslin for an 8-yard touchdown. Then in the fourth quarter, McEwen, another touchdown pass to Cody Matthews, who right place, right time, made an incredible 15-yard touchdown reception. Post Falls is up 21-14. Lakeland, it's kind of their final drive. They get the ball back with about 4 minutes to go, and we know the way the Lakeland offense works. They take a lot of time off the clock. This was going to be it. They march all the way down the field and score with 25 seconds to play. Hayden Benson hits Weil on, again, I believe this was a 4th down play. It was either 3rd down or 4th down. They call it time. Yeah, and the play that they drew up, they went 4 wide receivers. They stacked 2 guys on each side of the formation, and basically they ran like bunch routes and cleared out the middle, and Weil just ran a go from the running back spot and was wide open. Benson hits him to bring the Hawks within a point. And that's when Coach Mike Schroeder decides, instead of going for the extra point in the tie, he wants to go for the 2-point conversion and the win. And at the time I said this, I still stand by it. I think that was the right call, and I like that move. It didn't work out for Lakeland. They tried to run it with Weil. the entire right side of that offensive line collapsed. Post Falls came through to stuff it, and the Trojans end up winning an all-time classic 21-20.
I went back because we were on the call for that game, and you talk about drama. I mean, that game had everything. That was an awesome game to just as a fan and to call that game. I mean, that was a treat. The one thing I look back and I was like, man, I don't even know who made that tackle. And it was one of their linebackers, and I think he slid from the backside. And I was watching that play, and I'm like, he's knifed right through. He came across the nose of the center and the guard, ran underneath one of his own guys, and came out. And it looked like Weil was going to walk into the end zone. The Red Sea had parted a little bit. You said that line collapsed, but there was still an alley. And all of a sudden, he is just absolutely stuffed at the 1 yard line. That linebacker came out of nowhere to make that tackle. I thought he was going to go walking in and he was going to get it, and that it just got shut down. I mean, it was a great hit by the Mike backer to come in there and shut the door. And, you talk about that last 5 play of the game, like that drive. The last 5 plays of that game were crazy on that Lakeland possession. From the long play to a penalty to another good chunk yardage play to another penalty, and they get knocked back in the incompletion that looked like it was just out of the fingertips of his receiver. And there was so many things that were in that with drama, and you're like, all right, 4th down, here we go. It's 4th in the ball game. And that, like you said, that play call was just absolutely, a gem. From the coaching aspect, where you run the corner outs with your inside receivers to bring the safeties out, and you part the C right down the middle of the field and throw that seam route to Lovey Weil. That was an unbelievable play call. Gutsy call too. Because you overthrow that, it's like you're either the goat or you're, eating goat. Like it's one or the other. And, that they executed extremely well, and Weil just snagged that ball and went waltzing into the end zone. You thought all right, they got the momentum. This is going to be it. Lakeland's going to pull this one out. And that Post Falls defense stood their ground. And, I got a chance to talk to one of the Lakeland coaches afterward. And, the one thing that they said is hey, we got to stop the penalties, man. We shot ourselves in the foot over and over and over in that ball game. Lakeland beat Post Falls in every facet of the game except for penalty yardage. That was the only thing that was the differentiating factor in that ball game was penalty yards. And it was when they happened too. It was 3rd and long. You'd get a pass interference call. 2nd and long. You keep those drives alive to give Post Falls another chance. We watched Post Falls go from midfield all the way to inside the 10 just based on pass interference calls. It was 3 in a row that led to a touchdown. I think that led to Ostland's catch in the end zone, that 8-yarder that you talked about. But I go on about that game. It was a phenomenal ball game, but there were some messy parts, but I look at that. Both these teams, Post Falls has a huge test in front of them this week. Lakeland's going to get tested tomorrow night. The game might move from Friday to Thursday against Moscow. It's, we want to know what Moscow is. There's a lot of drama. We'll talk a ton about it in Gem State game day. But, I'm looking forward to it, man. This game Thursday night is going to be awesome between the 2 league rivals meeting again, now in a non-league affair. But
yeah, for sure. Ostland and Williams were the guys who caught the touchdowns for Post Falls, but the number one problem for Lakeland all night was Jimerson.
Yep.
They must have committed 6 or 7 pass interference penalties just on Jimerson alone. How about this in the chat? This makes sense now, Ryan. Matthew Hamilton says number 15, Damian Hamilton with the stop. He knows a thing or two about the takedown, right?
Yep.
Excellent wrestler.
Yeah. Go figure, a wrestler goes and makes the play, right? But that was, we couldn't see from our vantage point because we were stuffed in the crowd back on that backside. But when you get the end zone view of that play, it was a phenomenal, as a coach, that was a phenomenal job for Hamilton to slide in there and make that play. He read that thing textbook and tracked it down. It was huge.
Yep. It was an outstanding win for Post Falls and for Lakeland. They'll go their separate ways. They'll both continue winning, I think, and that'll help each other in the Max Preps rankings. I can't wait to see how this 5A IEL shakes out between Lakeland and Lewiston and Sandpoint, because all 3 have strengths. All 3 definitely have warts as well. And so any of them, I think, could win this thing.
They could all go 1-1.
Yeah.
Get it up in the tie.
and then in that scenario, I think I think no matter what happens, all 3 teams are going to make the playoffs.
Oh, for sure.
Would just come down to a point differential probably on who would actually win the conference. Sandpoint was on the other end of it. They lost to Pocatello over at Montana Tech's Alumni Coliseum in Butte, 49-48. They lost to Pocatello. Same thing. They got into a big shootout. Sandpoint scored late. They went for two, kind of like Lakeland did. Pocatello stuffed them. So Sandpoint definitely has some things to work on after giving up 49 points to a Pocatello offense that's been up and down a little bit this year.
Yeah. Like you said, all of these teams have warts. They have their blemishes that you kind of see, and things that they can work on. And it's whether it's teams that don't play with a lot of discipline, or it's like, the propensity to either turn over the ball, or everybody's had their issues on any given week, and they've shown weaknesses at times in some games. I didn't expect Lakeland to drop the game to Frenchtown. So you're looking at 2 losses in a row for Lakeland. It's kind of like, you look at this Moscow game, it's not really a must win because it doesn't matter for league championship, but for Max Prep's ranking sake and everything else, it could be the difference between heading down to District 3 and playing their number 2 team versus going and playing a district champ, on the road in Pocatello in Holt Arena, or, something like that. So there's a lot at stake still in this game, but I think more than anything, you just want to beat Moscow. Those 2 schools don't really like each other. They've been league foes forever. There's no love lost between the 2 of them. I think it's going to be a great game on Thursday night.
Yeah, and we will really start looking at the Max Preps rankings in earnest when the calendar turns to October.
Yeah.
But we mentioned it last week, and it still holds true. Lewiston is at number 4. Lakeland is at number 5. Sandpoint is at number 8. All 3 of those teams are in the top 8 right now for 4A rankings. Only one of those will actually be in the top 8 when the bracket is unveiled, due to the top 8 slots automatically going based upon district representation, and the Inland Empire League only gets the one official bid, which is a bummer. Moscow, for what it's worth, is number 5 in the 4A Max Preps rankings. So yes, a win here by Lakeland would definitely help them out for sure.
Yeah, and you look at each of these teams with a big, game in front of them. Sandpoint's taking on Coeur d'Alene Friday night. That's, the 40-mile rivalry. Like that's going to be a nice game. It's always an exciting ball game between those 2 clubs. It's going to be at Sandpoint on the shores of Lake Pend Oreille. Lewiston's hosting Kennewick, which is a great team out of the Tri-Cities. And, there's a chance that all 3 of these teams, get pushed really hard this week in the 5A. But also I think Sandpoint can push back with Coeur d'Alene a little bit too in their own right with their defense. But, it's going to be – Moscow's the question mark for me in the 4A rankings, because their scheduling has been less than ideal. It's been very favorable to pick up wins. Let's put it that way. Some of their opponents aren't necessarily having the seasons that they expected to have. And, we'll see. I think this is Moscow's first real test this season in that ballgame.
Yep, I totally agree with that. And then for what it's worth, Coeur d'Alene number 3, Post Falls number 6 right now in those 6A rankings. We got to get to Coeur de Christ. They got their first win in school history. But first, can I swerve off to a tangent here? Can I get on my soapbox for a second?
Sure. Go ahead. We're all about rabbit trails.
I think we just found our title. Let me. So the Max Preps rankings drive me nuts. And I've kind of, everyone jokes that I'm kind of like the Max Preps expert. I have no idea. You guys out there know just as much as I do about it. I try to analyze it and figure out what the bleep is going on, but I can't make heads or tails of it. They say there's no preseason bias. It's just the pure results. How did you do? Who did you beat? I'm calling BS on that, because when you look at the 2A rankings, and I'm not trying to make people in Kendrick angry at me, but I'm using them as the example here. Kendrick is number 1 right now in the Max Preps rankings. Butte County is number 2. How can that possibly be? Butte County has played one more game than Kendrick. They're 4-0. Kendrick is 3-0. And yes, Kendrick has put up some very impressive point totals, but it's quote unquote supposed to be capped. Your margin of victory is supposed to be capped at 15 points. So an 80-0 win should only count as a 15-0 win. And no, it's not Kendrick's fault. their strength of schedule has been a joke so far. They have played Troy, Lapway, and Oakley. Those 3 schools, I think, have a combined 3 wins.
So they played Clearwater Valley. I think they play Lapway this week, but yeah.
Clearwater Valley, and then they play Lapway this week. Look at who Butte County has played.
Yeah,
they have played Valley, which is 3-1. They have played Cary, which is 3-1 at the 1A level. They played Logos. Logos is 4-1. Butte County's strength of schedule significantly higher than Kendrick's, right?
I mean, you talk about preseason bias, and if you look at, I mean, win streak's got to mean something. It's got to play into it or something. You don't. I mean, I just don't.
I don't buy
so many hidden, but like I is in my mind, and like the Ryan Scaggs rankings, is Kendrick the best 2A team in the state? Yeah, they are. I mean, in my mind, like with what they have and on paper and what I've seen on the field, yeah, they've only played 3 games so far. But are they the best 2A team? Yeah, in my opinion, they are. Is Butte County the second best team? Yes, they are. In the grand scheme, does it really matter? Does it really matter yet? You know, how it goes through, because I think it's all going to shake out at the end. They're both going to end up the regular season undefeated, in my opinion. They're both going to probably, I can realistically see that being the state championship game and being a phenomenal ball game. But, you know, you're correct. The Max Preps drives me absolutely batty because you try to figure it out. I thought I had the code cracked 2 years ago when I said Sandpoint was going to end up being the number 3 seed, and everybody said there's no flipping way that's going to happen. And I'm like, no, here's why it's going to happen. It was because one of their out-of-state opponents was having a good season, and everyone's like, out-of-state wins don't matter. Now they come out this year and they're like, oh yeah, out-of-state wins matter. And I'm like, it's been in the system the entire time. They just didn't want to divulge what they use for the rankings, and so. Yeah, like, does it make, it's like, whose line is it anyway? It's where the rule, you know, everything's made up and the rules don't matter.
One of 2 things cannot be true with this Max Preps formula. Either they do take preseason bias into account, and if that's the case, okay, it makes sense that Kendrick, because they haven't lost in like 5 years. It's not that long, but I mean, they've won a significant amount of games in a row. So either that isn't true, or the fact that the point differential is capped at 15 is not true, because
I don't think it is. I think it's higher.
Yeah, because if you look at it, yes, Kendrick has had more dominant wins than Butte County, but Butte County has won by the 15-point threshold over Cary, over Valley. The only time they didn't was against Logos. So you're telling me a 1-score win over Logos is enough to put them behind Kendrick in the Max Preps rankings by 14 points or whatever it is right now? Something is not, like, we don't have the full recipe here. And that's what drives me nuts about this. You're right. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter. They are the 2 best teams. I can't wait to see them play maybe finally for a championship. That's way, way down the road. But I don't know. It's just one of those things that it could affect other leagues. And I'm just trying to drill down what exactly it is we're trying to do here. And I can't. It's frustrating.
That's what we've won. We brought that up, I think, early in the year with the IHSAA when they came through. It's like, well, what is it? Like, can we get an answer? Can we see it? And like, no, it's proprietary. And it's like, okay, so we just got to trust the process, right? Trust the process. Just, it is what it is. And I'm like, so you start using your prognosticating like mind and try to go through this, and at the same time it doesn't work, like, because you get to a point where you think you understand it and then you hit a roadblock and then it doesn't appear to be what it is. And so in my mind, I think that what I see, it reflects the media poll. It reflects the state rankings. If you look at the media and coaches poll, it like takes an average there too. So that, I don't know. Like, they say that the media and coaches polls don't get brought into the ranking system, but I mean, you see a lot of reflection that it makes some sense if you average out the 2 rankings plus the point differential and everything else. Like, you can start tracking it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I'll own it. I haven't voted Kendrick number 1 in the media poll at any point this year. To me, Butte County is the defending champion. As long as they continue winning, like, I'm going to give the nod to them. I mean, Kendrick's the new team on the block. And anyways,
some bulletin board material for Zane and his crew down in Kendrick. All right.
And here's the thing. I like Kendrick, and I think they would agree with my point that hey, until Butte County loses, they are the defending champs in this classification. They're both very good, well-coached teams. I'm very
Zane's
excited.
going to blow me up at some point today if he watches. I can guarantee you that. He's going to watch this and be like, well, so what's up with Baney?
For the record, I have nothing against Kendrick. I think they're a fantastic team. I saw that and I'm like,
that's a good cover. All right.
Something isn't right here. We are getting some support from our IdahoSports.com colleagues. Sean Kane from the East Idaho Prepcast. Looking good, guys. Joel Richardson. Brandon Baney's Max Preps rant, my favorite time of year. Preach, Brandon.
It's about that time of year. We're almost in October where Baney's going to lose his mind over Max Preps. It happens every year.
Yeah, you can set your watch by it. If you want to hear what Joel and Sean have to think about, how Max Preps is affecting East Idaho, you can tune into the East Idaho Prepcast tonight at 7:30 Mountain Time. That'd be 6:30 Pacific time on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. And coming up in a couple weeks.
We're going to do a crossover show. I'm going to make a note to make this part of the show because I think that we could get spicy.
I'm so excited to see. So programming note, I am going to be out the week of October 14th, pretty much that whole week. And so for the North Idaho and East Idaho Prepcasts, you and Sean Kane have a good friendly rivalry going back and forth over the years. We thought it'd be cool to do a crossover show where North Idaho and East Idaho collide. So that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks in October. I'm excited to see what you guys do with it. Joel is going to be kind of the moderator, I think, and hopefully it's not 2-on-1 Scaggs.
I feel like this is going to end up being like a debate, and I'm going to get piled up on.
There's Joel crossover and Sean.
We could just, rankings against 3 days. No, yeah, of course, Sean. Like that, we can talk about that tomorrow morning.
Yes.
But no, I'm looking forward to that opportunity to be with Joel and Sean. Two guys that do a great job. Their prepcast is insanely entertaining and very informative. Sean has his ear close to the ground in a lot of program. Obviously, he's a district employee down in Pocatello, works at Century, and knows a ton of the kids, but also a bunch of the coaches and stuff. And so he gets to be kind of in the front row seat with his position. It's going to be awesome because that's frankly an area of the state that I don't know a ton about. I've been in Pocatello once, driving through and got gas there. Like that's my East Idaho experience. So yeah, it's going to be a fun show and I'm looking forward to it. It's a couple weeks away, but we got some fun stuff up our sleeves too.
As somebody who lived in Pocatello for 5 years, pumping gas is about no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, of course. It's
like Pocatello, a great place to pee. Yeah.
You know what I did? I living there for 5 years. A lot of people do go through Pocatello on their way somewhere else. It seems like. Sean says gas and state championships is what we have. Okay. I love it. Hey, if you want to get a preview of what Sean and Ryan look like together on a panel, tune into Gem State Game Day tomorrow morning, live 7 a.m. Pacific time on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. Gem State Game Day, a new show we launched this fall where we basically preview, the slate of upcoming high school football games. I think it's been a good success here in its first season.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun, and the kids deserve all the notoriety. They put in the effort on Friday nights and sometimes Thursday nights or Saturdays or with one game on a Monday. This year we had a Labor Day game. So yeah, it's been fun to see this program grow and the involvement that, the high school athletics community gets to be, joining in with it. You check it out on, in the mornings on Thursdays and you'll see a coach saying, tuning in with my cup of coffee, sitting in my office, going through, game film, listening to you guys, that's awesome to see. Like that's a ton of fun. And, that's the reason we do this thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We'll get back on track now. Coeur de Christ got their first win in school history last Friday night up in Clark Fork. They beat the Wampus Cats 54-26. John Danke, 6 touchdowns, 5 on the ground, 1 through the air. We saw Coeur de Christ in their first game ever against Lakeside on North Idaho game night on IdahoSports.com. And we both walked away from that game going, probably their two best overall players are Denke and Ben Connolly. And Denke has just gotten stronger and stronger. He's only a sophomore running back, but man, he just continues to impress.
He's a dude, and rightfully so. I mean, the Idaho 8-man Prepcast gave him his well-deserved rights from over the weekend. He had a phenomenal game, a huge win. Look out. They could get 2 in a row this week. They're hitting the road. They're playing Deary. That's a game I could see them realistically being competitive in. And so, that's going to be a fun, stretch to watch this Coeur de Christ team, I should say. Get a little bit of mojo. Like, you get your first school win, you get it under your belt. Okay, we can do this thing. Like, I know they don't have the huge roster as far as, cast of characters to play, but they've got talent out there. And Denke's one of them. Like, that kid, he plays hard. He runs extremely hard. He's a, strong kid. He doesn't leave the field. Plays both sides of the ball. So, yeah, it's cool to see them get, that notch in their belt finally and realize they're like, hey, this kind of feels good. Let's go get some more. Because I could realistically see them ending the year with 4 or 5 wins, maybe. I mean, it'd be cool to see if they get 4 in the record.
Yeah. This week is going to tell me a lot statewide because we're getting some really good crossover games between North Star League, White Pine League, and 1A football, with Coeur de Christ going to Deary and then Lakeside at Genesee. I think that's going to tell us a lot too, maybe about the 1A football hierarchy. So I'm excited for those.
No, there's a bunch of good games statewide, and North Idaho's got a bevy of them too. So it'll be good to see how things, we'll talk next week and kind of see how the dust settles after this weekend.
Yeah. Speaking of, Ryan, tomorrow night, Thursday night football in the state of Idaho, there are 4 games happening statewide tomorrow night. 3 of them are in District 2. You've got Lakeside at Genesee. It's going to be Thursday night. Clearwater Valley and Kamei, the annual Upriver Rampage. That's going to be Thursday night. And then Lakeland at Moscow is going to be Thursday night. And you're like, boy, what's going on there? Well, long story short, they don't have enough football officials in District 2 to cover a full Friday of games. And so we have seen this all the way back to, I think it was week 2. Logos and Clearwater Valley got moved to a Thursday night. I think Alvin Hutchins likes Thursday nights. He's played a couple of Thursday night games this year over there at Clearwater Valley. But long story short, they don't have enough referees. And so a lot of games are getting moved off. That is going to happen in other districts around the state, I'm telling you. But to see it happening in District 2 already is a little eye-opening.
Yeah, it's, folks listening out there in District 2, you want to make a little bit of extra coin and make sure that these high school kids get to play on Friday night. I mean, you can go to the Idaho State officials website and go sign up. I mean, like, we need referees, and this game doesn't happen without them. So yeah, it's interesting because if you're not prepared, you're preparing for a Friday night, you have stuff in your, you want to be a Thursday heavy team if you're going to do your full walkthrough and go through scheming and all that stuff on Thursdays, and all of a sudden you lose that extra day on the back end. It can mess with some teams as far as their planning and preparation for the game, because it changes how you do your practice planning early in the week, especially if you had a tough Friday night. I mean, sometimes you got kids that are in the training room getting taped and iced and stuff like that, and they don't get a full Monday practice in either. So realistically, you're looking at one full padded practice and then maybe a half padded walkthrough on Wednesday before a Thursday night game. I mean, that's a short turnaround. If you got a complex offense, it's hard to prepare for that. So, I mean, you look at the advantage of the teams that are multiple, those shortened weeks favor them just slightly. I'd be interested to pull the stats together to see, like, offensive production either take a dip or defensive production take a rise, or give up more yards, depending on the type of team. I guess I'll have to do that to pull the stats from those Thursday night games and compare them to their season average on Fridays.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you one team that is going to pale in comparison, Coeur d'Alene. They had the one Thursday night game against Lewiston. They lost that game 13-6.
Yeah.
And otherwise, they haven't lost this year. It looked pretty good. And maybe it's different for other teams now, or, back when I played, when I was in high school, and this was, 2005, 06, 07. So quite a while ago. But the way we did it was Monday was pretty much conditioning and film. Tuesday was like 75% offense, 25% defense. Wednesday, it flipped 25% offense, 75% defense. So we're doing install if we're installing certain specific opponent type things. And then Thursday was the final walkthrough. Okay, here are the 20 most important plays. Here's what we're walking through. Here's the game plan. And then Friday,
here's special teams. This is what our special teams is going to look like. Like, that's the thing, that those other facets of the game that kind of gets pushed towards the back end of the week, and you're losing that time. So yeah, preparation comes into play. Like, it really does. So it's going to be interesting. Like, I mean, there's going to be some question marks. That Lakeside Genesee game and Moscow Lakeland, like those two games, you kind of look like who's going to be the better prepared team going into those games. There's a lot at stake for both those, in both those games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And that, again, this is going to happen in your district. If you don't think it is, you're sadly mistaken. Yep. And it's not just a football thing. It's happening in all sorts of sports. So we need more referees. And again, if you are a parent or a fan, don't be a jerk. Okay. Yeah. You're running off all of the officials. So knock it off. Seriously.
Well, yeah. And, we'll talk about it probably later, but yesterday was the state IHSA state meeting in Moscow, and some interesting things that came out of that were proposed for scheduling and stuff like that, especially in relation to state tournaments. I follow Matt Harris. He's a Ryrie athletic director. He's got a ton of awesome information that he pulls out from the state meeting. So possibility within 2 to 3 years that state wrestling could be coming north, which would be huge. And I know wrestling fans across the state of Idaho will be doing a jump for joy if the Kiwi Dome is able to host a state wrestling tournament again.
Yeah, they've always been a great facility to do it. They've had the Jazz Festival the past couple of years, right around the same time, but that is moved on the calendar. So yes, Kiwi Dome back in play. Very exciting for sure. Yeah,
there's a lot of cool stuff that came out of that meeting that looks promising, especially with private school enrollment reporting and stuff like that as well. So that's a whole nother Prepcast in itself.
Yes, for sure. Well, we went a little longer on this episode. This happens from time to time. I get off track.
We go on rants, man.
And I do. I go on a rant. Next thing I know, I look up and it's 47 minutes we've been talking here. So we'll end it there. Again, you can catch Gem State Game Day with Ryan and me and Sean in smaller font. No, I'm just kidding. Me and Ryan and Sean tomorrow morning on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and X account. And otherwise, enjoy the competition this weekend, everybody. Get there safe. We want to see you back here next week for another edition. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in to the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.